Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our executive webinar. My name is Jahn Karsybaev, and I'll be your host today. I'm a CIO of myBasePay, and we have an exciting discussion planned out for you guys on a very relevant topic, especially these days, executive staffing and talent acquisition strategies in talent-led markets. This webinar would not be possible without a panel of thought leaders, as you guys can already see in this space. And I'll let each one of them do a brief introduction of themselves, but real quickly, we have Arran Stewart from job.com. We have Zia Rahman from Wonderly and Cesar Jimenez from myBasePay as well. About 40 to 45 minutes, we have a discussion planned out for you guys with specific topics and questions that we wanted to cover. And I'll reserve the last 10, 15 minutes of the webinar for some live Q&A. But if you guys do have questions for all of our attendees, there's a ton of you. Just feel free to use the Q&A button down underneath there. Drop the questions, and I'll make sure that I'll try to get as many of those addressed as possible. So without further ado, Zia, I'm going to pick on you, and I'm going to let you start out, give a brief introduction of yourself and the company that you represent.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for organizing this, John. Really appreciate that. And nice to see you again, Cesar and Arran. So good morning. Real quick, it's always hard to do a Reader's Digest version of the background, so I'll give it a try and see if I can do this in 30 seconds or less. So I'm Zia Rahman, founder and CEO of Wonderly. We're based in Miami as well as Los Angeles. In a nutshell, I've been a technologist. My degree's in computer science. I grew up in the technology field. And ended up being CIOs and CTOs of various large-size companies. And sometime in early 2000, I have stumbled into the staffing world, and more specifically, healthcare staffing. And within that, I ran a couple of healthcare staffing agencies, ran Emerald Health Services for 7 years. After that, I did some M&A in our space, and for some reason, I went back and started another staffing agency and exited that as well. And so that really allowed me to see front and center that there was some technology that was needed and changed the way that people did business in our space, and that led me to start Wonderly in 2017. So Wonderly simply is a talent marketplace. Coupled with, it's a platform as a service, and we empower a lot of these hospital systems and large MSP VMSs, and we'll get into that shortly. So that's Zia Rahman from Wonderly.
Super exciting. Thanks so much, Zia. And Arran, I would love for you to go next. You're probably the owner of the best domain out there on the internet.
Yeah. Very blessed to have that. Arran Stewart, co-founder, owner, job.com. Tech evangelist, looking to automate the staffing process. You know, the goal of job.com is to remove the low value tasks and focus the humans on the high value stuff. And whilst doing that, the data capture that sits around that as well. I'm a huge proponent of developing AI and helping AI become a more useful tool to augment recruiters and humans. But, you know, I have a big bugbear that I know that, you know, statistically, at the moment, 85% of candidates will lie during the hiring process. And when you tell me that potentially 85% of my machine learning could be misinformation, that's a big issue. So we have a huge sort of strategy around acquisition of staffing companies, layering in technology, lifting those businesses, but also then creating a validated data pool that we then train our AI on and grow with. We describe ourselves as a data-driven digital staffing platform. And it's to give an experience for candidates to go end to end in the hiring process. So rather at job.com, rather than searching for a job, you get a job, which is the kind of differentiator for us. A little bit about me. I've been in rec tech 15 years. I love this industry. Mission of my business is to help as many people feed their families and pay their bills as possible, utilizing emerging technology to do that. And that's what we're here to do. And I'm really excited to be on this webinar right now. So thanks for having me.
Super exciting. Thank you, Arran. And last but not least, Cesar.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's hard to go right after those two guys, but you know, thank you, by the way, John, for that. But in any event, you know, I've been in the staffing industry for 25 years. I'm going to say something that my good friend and co-founder Angelo would say, that I think the staffing business finds you. You don't really go to recruiter or staffing agency universities for this type of stuff. You kind of fall into it, you got to love it. But learned a lot along the way for about 25 years. And along the way, I discovered this whole employer record platform business, or the employer record business. And we didn't invent anything new. We wanted to just take an employer record business to another level. And so we created one of the first employer record platforms out there. And so what we are is an employer record platform for the extended workforce. That's what we're here to do. And, you know, it's a great service, and that's you know, it's a phenomenal piece of the puzzle for the workforce ecosystem out there.
Thanks so much, Cesar. Really appreciate that introduction. So to get things going, each of you guys, as part of your organizations, you guys do a lot of research. You do a lot of research that goes on in your industry, in your markets, and, you know, a lot of things that are coming up down the pike. Arran, I would love to get your opinion first on what are the different trends and latest developments in talent acquisition that you personally very excited about.
Well, one that because again, you know, and you're gonna have to forgive me, but I'm always like visionary in technology, right? So I love the thought process, and it's a hot topic right now, but kind of the utilization of like new mediums such as, you know, virtual reality and VR to look at training, onboarding, interviewing, allowing people to have a virtual experience of being at a company's office. All these different things, which I know sounds really far into the future, but I wanted to talk about it because it's actually a subject matter that's being brought up quite a lot right now, and something that we're sort of looking at to over the next sort of 5 years. Might feel like strange, like, well, not sure if that's going to happen. I can assure you, as Generation Alpha especially come forward and begin to get older and start to look for the job market, that will be a new way of experiencing getting into, you know, a culture of a business, being onboarded by a business, being trained by a company. Will be a major way of doing talent attraction. And I think personally, that's like the most interesting and exciting one that I'm seeing at the moment from technology.
That's super exciting. We could probably dedicate the rest of the webinar to that particular space, because it's very near and dear to my heart, and especially in technology space.
Absolutely.
Zia, perhaps share few thoughts on maybe perhaps in some of the healthcare staffing side, that some of the opportunities and trends that you're very excited about.
Yeah, I'm actually quite interested in Arran, what he's talked about. And Arran, you know, send me over a virtual reality goggle interview. That's going to be quite interesting, and that's quite innovative. So
it is.
I guess, you know, for me, I live in healthcare staffing, but more narrowly within that is the contingent healthcare staffing. So I'm really focused in future work in that space, and what are the innovative things. And Wonderly really was early back in 2016 in terms of some of the things we saw that really needed to be changed. So I think some of the things that I see really innovative in our space, and some of them are out and we're doing R&D in that area, but I'll touch on that. And not to scare anyone, but there's a tremendous work that we are doing in R&D on the blockchain side of the business, because you are dealing with clinicians and making sure their credentialing and whatnot are trusted when they're actually sent. And lots of thought processes going in terms of how do we make sure that the nurses and doctors and whatnot, they are taking the test once, because we are talking about contingent workforce. They're temporary, they're going from one position to another position. So we're looking at that very carefully, but more importantly, I think what we see, and that's how Wonderly started, was the empowerment of the workforce. And there's all sorts of innovative way to empower the clinicians to make sure that they actually find a job that they're looking for. And we're also helping and seeing a lot of the folks move up the value chain. And that really was accelerated due to this COVID. And because of the pandemic and the COVID, people started thinking about new ways. And I know we'll talk a little bit about the direct sourcing side of the business, but we see a tremendous innovation in the direct sourcing in the contingent workforce area. As I said, it sounds boring, but we are leveraging all sorts of technologies to innovate, not simply automate the existing process. So there's, and we'll talk a lot about that. So I'm quite excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to pull the thread on some of the things that you've mentioned, especially the exciting times in healthcare staffing space. Is super interesting. Cesar, share some thoughts around the trends that you're personally researching. What are you excited
Sure.
about? Perhaps on anything that EOR models or back office solutions that organizations can really leverage.
Sure. Before I get there, I mean, one of the coolest things about doing stuff like this is that I constantly find myself taking notes when these two guys talk. It's just like nonstop of just keep it coming, keep it coming. But in any event, what I see out there, I mean, there's a lot of different things. One of the things I'm gonna say is more of a behavior-based thing. I feel like the adoption of new ways is faster than ever, which is great. I think the pandemic kind of forced that, kind of proved a lot of different things to that, remote work and work, or just in general, like a lot of different things, which is exciting because, when you're a new tech like us, it helps. Adoption is companies are looking for different solutions. And overall, the theme to me is having more of a direct relationship with the talent community versus relying on such a supplier-based model, which is great. Suppliers are, and we'll get into that a little later, they're absolutely vital. They're absolutely going to be necessary. That's never going to go away. But companies just want that direct relationship. I see that. So there's a lot of different solutions out there that are helping facilitate that type of transaction or relationship, right? From an ER perspective, I feel like one of the biggest things that elevated, or that's more from a new tech perspective, is really visibility to the onboarding process, understanding where they're at in the onboarding process, seeing if there's any type of red flags or if any type of assistance. Typically, it's been a very manual process for many, many years. And thankfully, with the solution with, you guys and John, your team and the developers and creating a solution, I mean, it gives us the ability to give all our clients, whether it be an agency or, a corporate, talent acquisition department, the visibility to where they're at in the onboarding process.
Definitely makes sense. Definitely relevant to everything that we're seeing in the current markets, which leads me to a further point I would love to discuss with you guys. And Arran, when I hosted you on the podcast about a year ago, one thing that you said that really stuck with me is there is no war on talent acquisition. There's war on retention.
Yeah.
And with so many opportunities out there for candidates on a global scale, virtual, on-site, hybrid models, it is becoming more and more challenging for organizations to retain the top talent. What are some of the practical recommendations? And we read all the articles. Everyone is probably on the same vibe, but anything that's very practical that maybe you can share some insight that you share with your partners, with your client companies when it comes to retaining the top talent.
Yeah, this is such a solid point, and it really is, because again, regrettable turnover, as we call it, which is where great people leave your business, is extremely wounding to a company. There are a number of different things you can do, but really you have to treat individuals, especially when it comes to retention, on almost a case-by-case basis. What is it that they need? First of all, it's probably regular recognition and also consultancy around their sort of, their performance, what they can expect, and feedback to their managers on what they're looking for or where they see their career goals, what compensation they want, what benefits they want. One of the things I am a proponent of, and we have obviously at job.com, is that we give everybody stock within the business. So if you work at the company and you have time served in the business, you get stock in the company. My opinion is, and I know that doesn't always work in every company, and it might not always work at every sort of job type, but I will double click on in this, that I just feel like that if people are value drivers towards value creation within a company and the value that creates for maybe the founders and owners and the shareholders, they should also have a share in that participation. And giving them that sense of ownership can be a massive, massive carrot to retaining them, because now they feel like they have more than just a job. This is part of their kind of generation wealth creation. I think that matters especially to the younger generation, millennials and Generation Z, who may not have wealth creation through maybe asset ownership of properties and stuff because it's so expensive, right? So these things kind of matter to that generation. It's sort of like, I need some sort of ownership of something. That might help too. So that's just a few things. I think regular communication, making sure you're giving people recognition, empowering people, showing them a road to progression, and also, if you can, giving them a piece of the pie as well.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. Cesar, I know you talk to organizations and hiring managers of organizations of various size, and some of those companies are more successful than the others when it comes to retaining the top talent. What are you seeing in the markets? What are some of the advice that you provide to them?
Wow, this is a big one. You know, a lot of people, I'm going to probably mention a lot about employer value proposition a lot in general, but I would tell you that, you know, before you start investing, because I feel like a lot of people are spending a ton of money on attracting talent, where they need to spend as much investment as in retaining talent. One of the things I feel like they should, at least from the consensus that I hear, is before you start going outside, like let's focus on building more of an internal employer value proposition first. Let's get, you know, understand who your players are, to understand where your successful people are, and start listening to your workforce. Start understanding what makes them happy, what can be better. Like I love some of the suggestions Arran made. I think, you know, sharing in type of ownership is going to help. It creates that ownership mentality. But I also feel like if you improve on your internal employer value proposition, you're going to create a recruiting culture internally. So now if you have, let's say, 200, 1,000 employees, you're not alone trying to win the war for talent. Now you're going to have 2 to 1,000 different employees help you attract the right talent by calling their friends, getting people to come in to work for the organization. You know, some of the things like that, at least in my opinion, I feel like we got to make sure the house is clean first before we start going out there and start marketing to new talent.
Makes perfect sense. Thanks for sharing that, Cesar.
Mhm.
Zia, as you were talking about the different trends that you personally were very excited about, future of work did come up. And according to Deloitte, the future of work is being shaped by 2 powerful forces: the growing adoption of AI, artificial intelligence in the workplace, and the expansion of the workforce to include both on and off balance sheet talent. What changes could be in store for the workplace, the workforce, and the nature of work itself based on the current initiatives in place at your organization? If you don't mind sharing some of those examples, Zia, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I take 10 seconds and make a quick comment on what Arran said and Cesar said, and I was watching as they were speaking, I was watching the chats go by when Arran said, you know, the millennials and Gen Z, and someone wrote, no, not just them. So,
That's right. Yeah, Christina's right. Christina's right.
But real quickly, I think just one point I would say to the millennials and Gen Z, not only exactly ownership, but they want to affect change. You know, there's so much passion in the new generation of people that they want to be heard. They bring so much passion, and we as owners and employers must listen to that passion and allow them to affect change. And I think that would help with the retention of folks as well. So to answer your question in terms of, you know, the future work, I see a lot of work in our space around talent curation. And what I mean by that is, you know, in the old days, you know, we would simply post jobs and wait for everyone to apply. And then we get this talent come through, and we get hundreds of resumes. We've talked to maybe 10 or 20 of them, and we've hired one. But, you know, I think it's time to look at that information differently with the advent of AI, with the advent of, if you want to call it job matching, but really applying AI and using machine learning to learn from the people that have already come through your system. Those 100 people that came through your system, I hope we have a mechanism through AI that we can go back when the new job post again for that we can curate that information first and foremost there. And I'll talk about some stats when we get into direct sourcing, but I think you'll see a lot more success. And I see a lot of innovation, and I've been talking about this in terms of especially in our space with the staffing agencies going out and looking for talent, or even corporate looking for talent. We are very busy trying to fill the top of the funnel. You know, let's bring in as many people as we can at the top of the funnel. And one of the things that I talk about, and our whole company talks about, our leadership talks about with our customer base is, can we flip that around through talent curation? You know, can it be an upside down funnel, just in time talent finding? So there's a lot of technology, and Arran is more close to this than I am in terms of applying AI. Everything I know about job.com, they are really doing a lot of advanced work in terms of talent curation. So he would be even better at that. So I look at that. And also hybrid workforce. It's very, very important. Hybrid workforce. And it's not, I think the days of just everyone going back to a physical building and working, and I do not want to discount that. There is a lot of brain dump that takes place when you're really together, when you're looking at the visual cues, facial cues, and all of that is important. So you have to figure out the balance between what skill sets can truly work from home and what skill sets truly should come in a hybrid way back to the corporate. So there are ways to identify the types of people. You have to do sentiment analysis. And I would love to hear Arran talk about that via AI, scour the social media and figure out, is this person right for the hybrid workforce? Is this person right for home-based work? Or this person really needs to be physically in the office? So I think applying technologies to help you identify, not necessarily make the decision. The decision at the end of the day will be made by a human being. And there are some rules and regulations around that state by state. We really need to be cognizant of that, that allowing AI to completely make the final decision has its own implications. And I think as we all learn collectively, the regulators will also try to understand how to mitigate those challenges. Hopefully I've addressed some of these things.
You did. There's a lot to unpack.
Nebulous, some are tangible, intangible, some are soft. But I think leaders like you, all three of you guys, fully understand and grasp what to apply when, and that's very critical.
Absolutely, Zia. Thank you for those perspectives and some of those examples, and a great segue, Arran, for you to share some perspectives on advanced technologies in this space as it shapes the future of work. And moreover, how is your organization preparing for whatever the next period is, and what are some of the recommendations you provide to companies that you work with?
Yeah, so first of all, Zia, thank you for all the lovely comments and compliments, by the way. I appreciate the reinforcement there, obviously from someone like yourself, especially with your track record. It's very kind of you. I mean, look, probably most people do know, if they know me in the industry, that I'm always quite far out when it comes to sort of my thought process and use of technologies. One of the things that Zia touched on, which I completely agree, is we've got to start looking at the way that the historical placement trends, rather than there's supply side machine learning, demand side machine learning. Supply side was where we'd send loads of jobs by email out and we'd look at candidate behavior. And based on that behavior, we would use that to train our artificial intelligence machine learning. Now that has moved towards, we need to be looking at historical placement data to look at who actually got placed and finding trends with that in a much more richer, consensus. Now, the bit that I'm a huge proponent of is the validation of data, okay? Like every day, there's 227,827 recruitment consultants working in North America as of September 21, and they're placing 16 million people into work every year. They will go through a process of validating that human, their references, backgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. There should be one central source of truth for that information that allows us to have that as a reference point to overcome monotonous, repetitive tasks, and also allows us to overcome the 85% of candidates that potentially lie during the hiring process as a way of hustling their way into a job. I'm not telling anyone not to hustle. I'm just saying that the job that you made your way into probably took it from the person that should have got it. How do we create this source of truth? I believe that the technology stack that should be used with that is blockchain. I believe that we should all have effectively a FICO score for our career that is stored on a cryptic key on blockchain, and you use that as a way of training artificial intelligence. Zia and I had a great conversation about this at SIA. We are both very much proponent supports of this strategy moving forward. And then in the future, I believe that video and also virtual reality, metaverse, is very much going to become the new medium of how people find opportunity. It's going to come to them. They're not going to go searching for it. So that's my point of view.
Exceptional points, Arran, and there's a lot to unpack, which takes me further on some of the things that, Cesar, you've mentioned as you were talking about the way organizations hire and retain the top talent, especially on the corporate side. I'm talking about direct sourcing. Tell us a little bit more about the overall concept, and if you have any practical, maybe use cases where you've seen organizations successfully implement and utilize direct sourcing as their competitive advantage when it comes to talent acquisition.
Sure, thank you for that. Well, direct sourcing, obviously direct sourcing, somebody's been talking about it for a long time, but it's definitely has absolutely matured over the last 24 months. I kind of want to talk about the why, we're kind of going back to like companies want a direct relationship with talent communities. They just want this reliance on suppliers all the time, and it's matured tremendously. I think it takes at least the best practice that I've seen, it takes a great deal to go right within a direct sourcing concept. One, you got to have the curation piece down. To Zia's point, that's got to be like, you cannot drop the ball on the curation piece, because one thing is to attract people, but the other thing is to keep them engaged and, you know, connected with your organization. And there's solutions out there. There's a great deal of opportunity for companies to be able to provide solutions in that space. You need tech, and obviously from an employee record perspective, like, you know, our organizations are typically afraid. I'll say the buyer community or the hiring communities out there are typically super afraid of compliance, especially general counsels. They just kind of stay, we don't do subcontracting. We don't want to hire a temporary resource directly, versus embracing it, you know, understanding how compliance, because this is a major talent pool in the US right now. I mean, it's already, I would say in the next couple of years, the next 24 months, it's going to tip over 50% of the US workforce is going to be contingent workers, or what we like to call the extended workforce. So embracing and having like a solution in place, like an EOR in place, to be able to, you own the talent, but we own the liability, it actually makes it work. So those are the different things that I've seen. I would say from definition, a lot of people have different variations, definition in direct sourcing, but it's literally just leveraging your employer brand out there to go out there and market and build talent communities for your organization that your organization is going to need. It's more of a proactive talent acquisition strategy than more of a reactive. So companies have to buy into, you know, into this concept and invest into that concept. And then obviously make sure that they have the right solutions to get it right.
One keyword definitely stands out is proactive, and being able to define your path and not wait for something to happen, especially when it comes to being able to attract and retain top talent. That makes perfect sense. Zia, you've been a huge proponent of direct sourcing and a thought leader in this space. Share your thoughts on just the overall and maybe some examples on direct sourcing.
By the way, I'm learning a lot from the chats that are coming through. Talking about TikTok, using TikTok. I'd like to talk to that person after this. So I consume TikTok, by the way, not shameful, every night to fall asleep, so which is great. Yeah, I think, you know, it's always important to understand direct sourcing. And there are two sides of direct sourcing. There's direct sourcing and there's managed direct sourcing, right? And when it comes to managed direct sourcing, you know, we work very closely with myBase, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But it's important to understand the history of where we came from. And the current market, as we know today, is dominated by VMS and MSP model, the framework. And in last decade, you know, the VMS has grown, according to SIA, 86%. So the adoption of VMS has taken place in last decade. The MSPs have grown 65% in last decade. That's great. That model has been working, and that model came about because of the previous model needed to be enhanced. And I truly believe that the direct sourcing, the new model that everyone is searching for, and accelerated due to the fact of COVID. COVID really accelerated for people to really think about, I need to find a new way of searching for candidates. You know, I need to make my business more efficient to find the candidates. And that really highlighted that. So a survey was done about a year ago that 60% of about 200 large employers were exploring doing direct sourcing. And a lot of that is have been implemented. A lot of pilot programs have gone through, and they've seen that, you know, that your candidate quality improves tremendously, the process efficiency that you gain through direct sourcing, and obviously cost and hiring visibility. So what we used to call moving up the value chain, thanks to the industry, they've actually named it. It's called direct sourcing. So what is direct sourcing? And to Cesar's point, it's really a lot of different applications of various technologies to achieve ultimately the speed to market in terms of hiring, right? So what does that mean? It really means the employer nowadays, and talking specifically about contingent workforce, where typically the employers would give the job to an agency would go and post the job and find someone. That's changing. The brand of the employer is very critical. To my earlier point, the millennials of today really want to be part of a cause. So the employer's brand is important, and going out and finding and posting jobs using employer brand is important. looking at the existing talent pool that the employer had that went through former employees, retirees and people they passed on applicant. This is where the talent curation aspect comes in. So you have to tie all of that in using some talent curation service layer. And then ultimately, if you want total management of this direct sourcing, you are really talking about going outside and working with your partner to get the employer of record or employer of agent. And this is where we work very closely with myBase to ensure that we can service that. So it's an incorporation of various technologies, ultimately removing a lot of the friction between the employee and the employer, utilizing employer's brand, and incorporating a marketplace. It's not only your existing talent pool, but also through AI, curating that and also going and plugging into a marketplace that can give you that and curate that. So that's really, in my opinion, what direct sourcing is. And I think at the end, that direct sourcing will, if you like, eat into the existing MSP VMS model. And I think people are waking up to that fact. We're all familiar with the innovation curve. And if I were to say where we are on the innovation curve, I think we just last year crossed the chasm, or we were forced to cross the chasm because of COVID. And we're in the early adopter phase. And I think there's a great opportunity here for all of us here and other companies that are thinking of empowering the employers to leverage that.
Thank you, Zia, and I appreciate you compartmentalizing in such a complex space as direct sourcing. I'm pretty sure that deserves its own webinar, which we should definitely plan in near term.
And if I may, I want to give you a couple of data points before I forget. So last 2 points, 15 seconds. There was a study done over the course of last couple of years by LiveHire. If you're not familiar with them, you can go there and take a look at them. They looked at curated and known talent pool, curating that with AI, what Arran was talking about, versus posting a job. You get 6 times more hire if you apply AI and curate that information and getting that talent, 6 times more hire than simply posting a job. Another example they gave, same study, they looked at curated and known talent using AI and versus using a staffing agents to find. It's 4 times the hiring. So these are tremendous numbers, and you can see the excitement in direct sourcing by the employers for these reasons. Therefore, cost is reduced as well. So
100%. And just add another data point there, Zia, I completely agree with you. Right now, I think it's over 92% of Fortune 500 companies have stood up a direct sourcing program. So the buy-in is there. It's just going to continue to mature. And it's not even the one thing that I am learning at first, initially when direct sourcing came, was about kind of saving money, but that's like 3rd or 4th or maybe even 5th down the benefit pole, right? It's about the relationship and a proactive hiring strategy, to have that direct relationship with the talent community. So it's going to gain, it's going to continue to mature. There's a ton of players in this space. It's just a matter of just making sure you get it right.
Great points to both of you. Thank you. Arran, you've talked a lot about advanced technologies in talent acquisition and retention, and just overall, if you could provide some examples, so maybe use cases of effective implementation and leverage of technology in general as a competitive advantage when it comes to sourcing, attracting, processing talent. Maybe what solutions are currently in place at your organization that really help you stay ahead of the competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's for us, it's about process automation. I mean, all of us have been in the recruitment staffing space now, for a long time. There's lots of low value tasks that now AI and other, user experiences and technologies that can just automate. Gone are the days of, let's say you have a sourcer who's out there looking for good candidates. Well, they work from 9 till 6, hopefully. Well, what happens from 6 till 9? In a world where I'm used to getting cabs at midnight and ordering takeout to my house at any time, candidates want to complete their application and schedule themselves through the process in a more effective manner, utilizing intuitive technologies and experiences. So it's, that's a major component. I think that, TikTok, someone talked about this. I'm a huge proponent of TikTok resumes. Obviously, it's got 360 million likes, probably the biggest data set ever of people saying that they want to do a particular way of applying for a job and expressing themselves, maybe overcoming the traditional written resume. And I think, one of the things that we've done at job.com is we did a huge partnership with Triller in order to do that. So that's probably some of the sides from my side.
Nice.
Great examples. Thank you, Aaron, for that. Zia, you've been in technology and staffing space for quite some time, a few years, and you have multiple organizations that you've had success with. Share some thoughts on technology and talent acquisition across paths.
Yeah, and one of the things, if I can impress upon, there are a lot of technologies out there right now, lots of technologies. But as staffing companies and as also employers, and I deal with hospital systems and staffing companies, the core competency of them is not technology, right? They use technology, but it's not the core competency. You really have to look at what are the companies out there that are giving you these service layer technologies that speak to each other. I know a lot of staffing agencies, they use, for mass texting, they use this tool. For mass email, they use this tool. For applicant tracking system, they use this tool. And they're buying. But the biggest challenge they have is they don't talk to each other. And I hate to dumb it down to that level, but it matters. All of that friction that you're importing, exporting, all of that, at the end of the day, what happens is, and I think Aaron touched on this, the experience of the employee suffers because of this, because these are all disjointed technology. So my advice to everyone who's looking to procure technology, try to identify companies who really can provide a platform for you, platform as a service of various services that interact with each other. You don't necessarily have to go to one vendor to get that. You can do that, but so long they're seamlessly communicating, because the last thing you want to do is hire up developers and CTOs. That's not your core competency. So, at the core of a lot of the staffing companies are applicant tracking system or a CRM system. And how well does that work with a marketplace? How well does that work with, your EOR if you use an EOR? How well does it work with the credentialing software? And then do you actually have visibility into what is the market paying today? How do you know that? A lot of us are going to salary.com, this and that. You really need a software. And there's a lot of these software out there, including Wanderly, that can give you, in our industry, a real-time what the bill rate is, real-time what the pay rate is, because we are data aggregators, right? That is very critical to understand at the end of the day, because last thing, you like an employee, but you are haggling over what the salary should be. And one of the things I think John and I talked about on another podcast is what we do internally is, I tell my HR is, do not post what the salary range is. Just simply don't post what the salary range is. Find that person, it's very important. Bring them through the ecosystem and then have a conversation, because you'll be surprised. You may be missing out someone because you decided to pay them $10,000 less, or $15,000 less, because you cannot put price on that talent in terms of dollar. So it's a combination of all these platform as a service working very seamlessly. And there are a lot of discussions that I myself personally would love to have with Arran and learn a lot more about what he's doing and how else we can leverage each other. And last thing, do not be afraid of competition. If you're constantly innovating, figure out a way to work with the others, because you will never be the best of everything. You need to partner with others that have the best of technology and incorporate. So
that's right. And when it comes to innovation, the main beneficiary out of all of that is the candidate, which leads me to a further point I wanted to discuss. Maybe Cesar, you can start sharing some of your thoughts. Companies that are able to consistently attract top talent have very solid practices and procedures established when it comes to interviewing. Share your thoughts on the most effective interviewing strategies, maybe pre, during, or post interview, that can help companies select better and move faster in this highly competitive market.
Okay, definitely. I mean, we can literally have an entire webinar about interviewing and best practices. That's a big pain point in our industry. I just feel like as a statement is like, we need to get this right as employers. We work really hard really to get to some point. And right now, talent today, more than everything, has options. Everybody has a ton of options more than ever. And, they get disinterested, or they, it can affect your employer value proposition if it's too long of an interview process, or if it's too drawn out, or even just down to just best practice from a job description, just the way it's written and read, things of that nature. So you have to make sure there's a lot of front end optimization when it comes to job descriptions, a clear interview path, kind of explain the roadmap and how it works, and why we take it to that. Because I think once candidates understand the why, whatever the interview process is, they understand, versus guessing and then getting caught or surprised with another interview phase is distracting, and it just creates a lot of negative perceptions of an organization. Something really simple though, that can, it's going to go back between interview practices and a little bit of employee value position, because I'm big on that, is kind of a circle back strategy. Like, there's a ton of people that apply and that really want, and kind of the theme here is like, people that apply to a position may not be a fit for today, but they might fill a rec tomorrow, right? And we all know that. Those people that interview, you get it down to those from 100 to 7 to whoever gets the offer. That doesn't mean the rest of the folks could not, fill a role later. So a circle back strategy is really key, and it's a technology out there that you can actually help. So you want to get back to people, regardless of the feedback, regardless if it's negative, or maybe it's just not the right time, or this is the reason why. I think what it does for your organization, it gives you, at least they were very transparent with me. They were very upfront with me, because not right now, but maybe later, you can always come back to, right? Understand, I also feel like coaching hiring managers is key in an interview. Understand that talent today is interviewing your organization as well as you're interviewing them. They're interviewing you and they're interviewing your hiring managers. You're on audition. So it's a balance, finding that balance between, making sure that they have the right skills that I'm looking for, but at the same time, make sure that they understand that, we bring a great deal of value to you, the talent, and from a growth perspective or innovation perspective. People out there, again, kind of going back to that, we have a lot of options today. Another point is, like, in general, I've been saying this for years, I think the interview thing is not just today, but it's just been challenging in general, just for any organization. It's kind of re-engineer the interview process. Figure out what works for you. Get feedback internally from some successful hires or people that came in, even the ones that, that give you some negative feedback on their process, but they wind up joining your organization anyway. Understand those type of things and collectively create an interview process, a best practice interview process that makes sense, right? Also, just coaching them, again, going back to coaching in hiring managers, is understanding the market condition and understanding it's okay to hire people with 50 to 60% of the hard skills. It's okay to grow talent. You're going to wind up getting more tenure out of them. You're going to create more loyalty. A lot of people tend to kind of, I want to see more other options. I want to see other options. I want to get as close as I can. I'm trying to look for that perfect candidate. There's no such things. I mean, if you have, you never negotiate on intangibles. You never could negotiate on character. You can't teach that. You either have that or you don't. I can teach you 30% of the skill set, and especially in certain roles, especially in IT, where I kind of grew up, you can get there fast. You can get there within 6 months to a year and be that perfect candidate that you want. But it's hard to flush out and find the intangibles that you want. So I would say overall, there's a few different things I'm talking about, but I would say re-engineer the interview process. Make sure you understand that something that's consistent, that works, make it as short as possible. Make sure that we're coaching our hiring managers on, understanding what the market is right now, and understanding it's okay that you're being interviewed as well, and understand that, it's okay to hire, make concessions on hard skills and never on intangibles, and just get back to people, regardless of whatever the feedback is. Get back to people. There's a lot of automation technology out there that can do that. There's a lot of touches, but again, it goes back to like that curation piece, because who you touch today may not fill the role, but 2 years from now, they can. They're a different skill set. So those are some of the practices that at least my opinion, what I see out there.
Arran, you hire a lot as part of your organization, and also partner with others when it comes to the interview process. Anything that Cesar may have not touched upon that really stand out when it comes to your interview processes that you establish in place at job.com?
Well, no, look, Cesar's obviously very comprehensive, right? And has touched on all the points. I think that we try where possible. You can't do it for every level, but we try where possible to have like a very senior member of the team go through the kind of interview process to help provide a level of the vision. And that's particularly to us. And I think that's particularly to a lot of companies. And the reason for that is sometimes, especially at job.com, people will struggle to compartmentalize us, as in like, what are you guys doing? You know, so it's like, okay, let me give you like the big picture here so I can get your buy-in. And they like to hear that from leadership. And, you know, and you try and cascade that culturally throughout the business. But I think just especially for us as a company, it's kind of, you know, we're still early stages of growth. You know, yeah, we've got, you know, a good decent amount of employees, but in the grand scheme of things, we're still a small company next to, you know, Fortune 500. We're tiny. So so that's what we try and do, and try and make sort of passion infectious. I'm a big proponent of that, right? I just feel like that if you're going to spend a third of your life doing something, do it because you love it. Come on, man. That's what we're here for, right? Do it because you love it. I know it doesn't always not that way with people, and I completely appreciate that. But, you know, if you are going to have to do it, do something that you love and come and join us and love it with us. You know, let's go and help more people feed their families and pay their bills. Let's change this thing, you know, and I always try and cascade that throughout the business.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Very powerful words, Aaron. Thank you for sharing that. Zia, you and I briefly touched upon that when we talked, you know, on the podcast a few months ago, in terms of interviewing and too much focus on what are the weaknesses that I can tolerate in a particular candidate versus what are the strengths that are missing on my team, and can that candidate fill that void? Share your thoughts on some of the interview practices that really help you.
I'm sorry, John, I just got cut off in the last 10 seconds. Can you repeat that? Sorry about that.
Basically, share your perspectives on the interview process that really help you succeed and select the best.
Okay, great. By the way, that's one of the reasons working from home. Internet must be really strong, and my wife must be watching a movie or something, so mine slowed down. Okay. Yeah, it's. I'll keep it short. I think I echo everything that Cesar and Arran said, of course. I think, you know, one of the things that is very important is the interviewer get a curated dashboard of the person they're about to interview. And what I mean by that is, can we get the aggregate information from not only the resume, look at their LinkedIn, look at their application, get all of that and pull out some of these critical information from there, couple that with their social presence, and can you do some sentiment analysis? So before you even start the interview, you have something for the interviewer that's already in a very curated way, as opposed to just simply looking at a resume, highlighting the old school way, and be ready to interview. So use the technologies as best as you can to curate the interview resumes and LinkedIn information and the recommendations. And also technology should give you the keyword ranking of that person matched against your job description. That's also added help information. These are just information, not making any decision. You as a human being still have to use, my internet went off a little bit, but someone talked about, you know, the passion. You know, when you're doing this interview, what I'm looking for at the end as a leader is, yes, by the time they come to me, and it's kind of, you know, as a CEO, I like to, our organization is not that huge, but we are big enough, but I still would love to meet every single person that we make the final decision on, not because of technical reasons, but I'm looking for that passion. I'm looking for that energy. I'm looking to see if that person fits the culture. Culture is very critical. And last but not least, through the passion, identify, are they trying to join this company because they truly believe they can make an impact in the company, right? And never be hired. And this is to my leadership, I say this, and the managers, I say this, never be scared to hire someone who is better than you, technically, better than you, because that is the only way you will be promoted upwards. Otherwise, you'll be doing the same job trying to manage your own department. You have to find someone you can mentor. So these things are critical to me and very important. And I noticed that I'm always reading this, and there's a lady, I'm going to butcher her name, Layli. She's exactly right. I apologize if I butchered your name, that it is important to also leverage staffing agency partners to get the types of candidates that you may or may not be able to gather with your own. So I live in that world. I 100% agree. It's an important partner to work with.
That's great. Thank you, Zia. Thank you for that. And that's a great segue calling out our participants because we ran out of time a little bit, but I can spend a few minutes answering the questions from the live audience, which is very engaging participants that we have today through chat. So definitely appreciated that. Few questions that are coming through, and maybe Arran, I'll pick on you. If I could summarize, the question is all around candidate onboarding, especially in virtual and hybrid environments. How do you improve that space? There's a couple of questions about that.
Yeah, so in my opinion, it's all to do with structure and creating that structure and accountability immediately that gets people straight into a routine. And then having that constant communication with various touch points of individuals within the company and creating accountability amongst them. So it's, it is a little bit more micromanaging than maybe we would first like, but the reality is you're not necessarily sat in an office, in a room where you can kind of cast your eye over someone or make sure that they haven't got any issues, they're remaining productive. Whereas, in the initial stance of maybe working from home, or should we say working from anywhere, sometimes a human being's natural reaction is the path of least resistance, which is, well, I don't know what to do, so I won't do it. And that can be very damaging to kind of the successful onboarding of someone, making them productive, making them feel like they have a flow. I personally am a proponent, and I am very strong about early mornings. I like to start people early, and I like to do my calls early to get going. That's just me. Sometimes people are like, you want to do a call when? I'm like, well, early bird catches the worm. But I also believe that that's healthy for human beings too, which is to be up, productive, and let's go. So I'd rather you be up early with me, talking to me, getting things done, and enjoying your evening, having dinner with your family and your kids, right? Rather than sitting burning the midnight oil. Let's get it done.
That's right.
So that's my point of view on how to get that stuff going.
I love it. Some words of motivation here from Arran to close out the webinar. I think I have a couple more minutes to take one more question. Z, I'm going to definitely let you take this one. It's all around healthcare IT skill sets. Which are the most in demand? And if you were starting out in the space, what skill set would you invest in?
Good question.
Healthcare IT skill set. We're talking about individuals, right?
I believe so. The question is around, if I'm in technology and I'm working in healthcare, what are the skills that I would, you would invest in if you were starting out in that space?
Yeah. So we're obviously a technology company. We've got lots of technologists that are running our company. Oh, by the way, we're looking for a CTO. So if anyone's a CTO, we're currently interviewing.
I love it.
You are looking at your de facto CTO, so that's the problem, and the company grew too fast. No, it's really it really depends on which company you're applying for, right? Technology is quite diverse depending on what the company is working on. So if you're a developer, obviously it has to match the skill sets they're looking for. Like if you're a Java programmer and they're looking for a Python, that would vary. But fundamental understandings of the most important thing I can give you is you have to have a solid understanding of systems integration. And what I mean that is in healthcare, especially, there's a lot of legacy systems, hospitals, MSP, VMS, there's a lot of legacy systems, and people who thrive in there, or yes, you can be a pure developer of a very narrow area, but if you want to move up and grow, career advice within healthcare is you really have to understand systems integration. How can you make the systems speak to each other? So you have to have a good, solid understanding of that. But yeah, it's really very deep, specific question. I'm not sure I can help you more, but be good at what you do. There's so much diverse technologies that are being utilized in our own space. If you're a Python developer, Python developer. If you're C developer, you're a C developer. If you're a website guy, you're a website guy. We need all of those help. But generally speaking, there's a tremendous work going on in the AI field. So call Arran if you want to work in the AI area. There's a tremendous work going on in blockchain area.
Job.com.
And there's lots of other types of work that are going on that, we can talk about, but they are on the bleeding edge side of it as well.
That's great. That's great. Can
That's a
definitely
good
relate
point.
on so many levels. And unfortunately, we're out of time. Zia, Cesar, Arran, I can't thank you enough for your time today. Very insightful conversation. I personally learned quite a bit. And thank you to all of our participants who, there's so many of you guys, very engaging audience. So very much appreciated. And thanks so much for your time, everybody.
Thank
Right.
you, everyone.
guys.
Have a great day,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Pleasure,
Great
brother.
day. Have a great day.
You too, man. Take care, brother.